How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another video on the channel. In this video I'm going to be installing an aesthetic mod on my C5 Corvette that I've been wanting to put on the car for quite some time now, and recently there was an opportunity to partner with a company that manufactures this mod, so I'm going to be going over the product, showing you guys the install video, and kind of just giving you guys my overall thoughts and feel on it. And so the product is a front splitter for this car. Just looking for something to give the car a little bit more personality and just kind of more of an aggressive look in the front end area. So starting off by getting the car jacked up, because I need ample space underneath the front bumper to be able to get underneath, drill all the holes needed, and obviously install the front splitter. So with this car, with how low it is, you got to kind of jack each side up first, put it on some blocks or drive onto the blocks, and then throw the jack stands underneath the car. So getting the jack stand set, and then always give a good solid shake and shimmy to the car to make sure it's set nice and snug on your jack stands. For doing the front splitter, it's really only needed to jack up the front of the car to get the front end high enough to get underneath it, but I'm also in another video, which I'm kind of filming simultaneously, doing this on this day, is the side skirts. And to do the side skirts, you need to take off the rear wheels, so that's why I'm jacking up all four corners of the car. So the company, again, I partnered with is a company called Extreme Online Store. They manufacture all different kinds of aftermarket aero products and just general kind of aesthetic composite, plastic pieces for all different kinds of cars, focusing a lot on the C5 Corvette, C6, C7, and C8, and then also Camaros and a myriad of other cars as well. But obviously I've partnered with them for this front splitter here, which you can see, and I opted to get the ABS kind of unfinished version for a few different reasons, which I'll go over later in the video here. But you guys can see, here's the front end of the car. Just a basic front end of a C5 Corvette. Nothing wrong with it, but just looking to add a little bit more pizzazz, give it a little bit more personality, and even a more aggressive look to it. And I think a front splitter and the side skirts as well will definitely help that. So just kind of laying an overall kind of look and feel of what the car stock looks like, so we could have something to compare to before and after. So again, here's the overall, the front splitter before I install it on the car, just giving an overall kind of point of view. Quality of the product is great. It is plastic, but it feels very sturdy and rigid. It comes pre-drilled with all the holes you need, so you don't have to guess where to drill holes on this thing, which is awesome. So it basically was your drill guide for where to drill holes into the bumper. And the plastic itself was, good quality plastic from what I've seen so far. Obviously, time will tell on how the material holds up to the sun and kind of overall wear and tear. But the trim lines, when they pop this thing out of the mold, were really clean, kind of no major burrs or just rough edges. It was a very clean product. Pretty happy with it. There was kind of like a white dust or powder. I don't know if that's maybe from the manufacturing process or shipping process, but really no biggie. It's underneath the car, and it easily just wipes off with a dry rag or even a wet rag. So really kind of happy with overall initial impressions of the product. So first thing that you got to do is you got to take off the middle air dam on the car. So it requires you to take these two aluminum brackets off that hold the center of the air dam to your kind of radiator support structure. And then there's two outer bolts that hold the air dam to it as well. So I'm just kind of getting it roughed up here, seeing where all the hole locations mount up and where this thing kind of just mounts up overall to the whole bumper. And it also picks up, so there's a bunch of pickup points that are from pre-existing fasteners that all you have to do is just kind of take the fasteners out, like the center one here. It's a very important one because it holds up the very centermost point of the bumper, or the front splitter. And then there's a bunch of fasteners on either side, I think like one or two, that use these kind of U-clips as part of the pickup areas for the front splitter as well. So kind of the game plan was to get the center one roughly set. So don't cinch it all the way down, kind of like when you're putting together IKEA furniture. You don't want to cinch one screw down all the way. You want to kind of just get them loosely fit up, and so it gives you some adjustment room and wiggle room to get it set in place. So I got the center one hooked up, and it's strong enough to just hold its own weight right there, so I can kind of get it mocked up on the sides. And the key thing that you'll see here is that you want to spend the time to make sure that the front splitter is lined up with the front edges of the wheel well before you tighten everything down completely, because it's easy to shift one side further back than the other. So it is designed well. It does fit up flush to both sides on the front edges of the wheel well, so you can see here, or this was before, so it kind of needed to be pushed forward, so it kind of had to give a little bit of a forward push while simultaneously cinching that screw down on either side. And so once I got those two set in place, you can see that side looks a lot better. Once I got those two set in place and mostly snugged down, not maybe all the way, then I went back in and snugged down the center one, which holds up the little brace in the middle of the front splitter. So a lot of people will use self-tappers for this. I'm kind of, I only like to use self-tappers if they're absolutely necessary. And so a few reasons why I went with a through bolt and hex nut setup on here, and more specifically it's a flange bolt and a flange locking nut. First reason being is you can access both sides of the fastener. So obviously the bottom side is very easy to access with the car jacked up, and then the other side is easy to access because you just take off some of the lower panels, and you can, it's a little bit of a challenge, which you'll see here in a second, but you can get your hand and a wrench on the nut since I'm driving the bolt up through the front splitter and the bumper. So I just like the ability to have a removable hex nut that's not relying on self-tapping threads that might have a chance to strip or pull out. Just with this being on the front of the car, it is going to see some air loads on it while you're on the freeway at higher speeds. And in addition, I wanted this piece to be easily removable in the event that I bottom out the front of the car and absolutely obliterate the front splitter, which I'm going to kind of explain why I went with the plastic version instead of the composite one in a second here, and also the glossy one. They all have their right fits for each person on with their car, but I have my reasons to go for the plastic one. So you can see it's a little bit of a labor of love to kind of get your hand in the back side, on the bottom side and the back side of your hardware set. Whether it's I did the bolts going up because what I did was I drilled the holes undersized, and then I actually drove the bolts in, so they were kind of like, in a sense, self-tapping, which held themselves in place, which was really helpful instead of just falling out the bottom. And then I threaded the nut on top with the threads protruding through, and then got my wrench in place. And so this is the placement of all of the bolts. And so you can see there's a bolt in the very front corner, two bolts, or what I will have two bolts is kind of up holding the center point. So those ones are the ones that I actually went in and reached from the top side underneath the hood, kind of like where I'm showing here with the camera now. So you can see the threads protruding there, and it's holding in place because the hole was undersized. So because it's just plastic, you're kind of, even though it's not a self-tapping hardware piece, you can see it's pretty awkward to try and get your hand in, but I made it work. So I kind of got the nut started and then used a combination of like a crescent wrench and a socket to drive the locking nut onto the bolt. And I think it's really important to use nylock lock nuts because this will see a lot of vibration. You don't want any chance of those hardware to wiggle loose. So there are the two bolts holding kind of the center of it, and then just a bunch of bolts going up through all of the pre-drilled holes that came with it. And this shot kind of shows you that like white dust on the front splitter, but again, that just wipes off really easily. So with that panel removed, kind of right where the brake cooler duct goes, you can actually get your hand in. Again, it's a little bit of a reach, and especially a wrench helps, but you can get your hand in with a tool and get the nut on. And basically what I did was I held the nut on the top side and then drove it in and rotated it from the bolt side on the bottom. And that was what allowed me to install this pretty easily. So I like the fact that it's sturdy. You can see it, the thing is not going to move. The whole bumper was flexing, not just the front splitter. So, don't think that this is a fully, functional aerodynamic piece. I mean, if you really want a functional aerodynamic front splitter, you need to get a chassis mounted front splitter that picks up on the frame rails, which they do have, but they look like a big picnic table, and it's really not my style and not the intent for this car. This is just more of an aesthetic mod than anything. So you can see here I'm driving those bolts into the undersized holes with my kind of electric screwdriver and then getting at it from the top side there. Keep in mind that on the passenger side, the centermost bolts, one of the holes will run into, I believe that's the ambient temperature sensor, so I had to move the hole either, I think it's back a little bit or forward, so that I didn't just run right into the sensor, which would have been bad, drilling right through that. So then this is my setup of kind of driving in those bolts and nuts from the bottom and then using the wrench on the top to hold the nut and keep that from spinning. So the other thing too that I'll point out, so the reason why I went with a plastic front splitter and the unpainted kind of matte finish one is, one, I went with the matte painted black because I'm planning to 3D print a custom rear spoiler, and the material that I use to 3D print primarily is a black ASA, and it kind of has a matte / slightly kind of semi-gloss look to it when it's printed, so it will match this a lot better than the glossy black finish will. So here's the finished look on the car. I just think it looks so aggressive, and it really this is the front splitter that shouldn't it should keep the car from overheating, because it actually has a ram air kind of duct in the center there where it's forcing air directly up into the chute to go into the radiator. So really happy with the overall fitment of this. It fit up really well, really sturdy piece. For the price point that you pay, I mean, you can't really complain there for it being a plastic part. And so that brings me to my next point. So going with the matte black because it matches the 3D printed material that I use throughout the car. The reason why I went with black is, or not black, the reason why I went with plastic is because if I were to bottom this thing out, and it is pretty low, even with my car in kind of like monster truck mode without putting the coilovers on yet, it came pretty darn close to scraping my driveway coming into the house. So I wanted to have the ability, in the event I bottom this thing out and damage it, I'm a lot more experienced and well versed with doing plastic welding and plastic repair. So you can do that because this is ABS. You can do that with acetone. You can do solvent welding. You can do plastic welding because it's a thermoplastic. So there's just a lot easier of ways for me to repair this than having to repair either a carbon fiber or fiberglass front splitter. And doing it the right way is you do a composite repair over whatever the base material is, whether it be carbon fiber or fiberglass. So the idea of having to do a composite repair layup just sounded a lot less appetizing to me, given the price point and the proximity of this thing to the ground and what likelihood of it might becoming damaged over time, just with how steep some driveways are, and no matter what angle you go at, sometimes you will just scrape. Anybody with a low car kind of knows that. So that's kind of my reason why for going with plastic. So here's the overall look of the car, also with the side skirts installed. I'm doing this kind of all at the same time, but including it as another video. So just really happy with the overall look and feel of this car, or look of the car with this front splitter and the side skirts on as well. I think it kind of gives the car a lot more personality, gives a little bit more of an aggressive look, and just kind of adds some flair to it. It just brings it up from just being a stock C5 Corvette. Again, really great on the price point. Super happy with this. So thank you, EOS, for partnering with me and sending this out. I'm excited to continue using the car with this additional kind of aesthetic aero pieces installed. If you have any questions, feel free to comment on the video, and I'll try to get an answer back to you. And other than that, thanks again for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.